Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:07. Let's get straight to it. Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock on this very busy Monday morning. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Everyone's sort of digesting what appears to be a blockbuster trade deal between President Trump and the EU that was formally announced yesterday afternoon. Still some details yet to emerge, but on the face of it, the woman who runs the EU and who was negotiating with Trump was asked, what were the U.S. concessions here? And she said, well, nothing. We had an imbalance, and we've tried to fix that. And the fix looks like the EU committing to buy $750 billion in energy products, $600 billion in other new investments in the U.S., and a bunch of U.S. military equipment. In exchange, Trump will not increase tariffs to 30% as the August 1st deadline was looming. And it looks like win-win. So Sean Spicer joins us, who, of course, before his fame on Dancing with the Stars and other various pop culture iconic sort of platforms, he was in politics. I don't know if you know that about Sean, Julie. He used to be in politics, and he was, in fact, the deputy trade representative during the Bush administration, among other jobs he's had. Sean, thanks for joining us this morning.
You know, there's a documentary I saw on Netflix called "Get Me Roger Stone," and it's details with how people would call Roger during a PR crisis. And as the news broke yesterday, on a Sunday, by the way, amazing to see a president work on a weekend. I guess I just got used to the previous 4 years. I thought Heather Hunter at WMAL is doing the same thing. It's not "Get Me Roger Stone," it's "Get Me Sean," because
Get Me Sean.
Larry's going to need to talk about this, so it's. Anyway, it's always good to know that on a variety of subjects, like most, I can be here to get you through the day.
Your understated humility is always an inspiration to us, Sean.
I appreciate it.
What do you? Seriously, am I? Listen, again, this isn't the MAGA morning show. I try to look at things as critically as possible, but what's the downside? This is remarkable.
So it's a good thing because, as you know, and you've been a great fan and a fill-in for the morning meeting, and Dan Turntine and I go back and forth on a lot of these deals, and he'll say, well, it's not as much. I mean, we haven't, obviously it starts at 9, so we'll see what Dan says about the EU one, but with respect to China, the one with Japan and such. And my point is we're getting entirely screwed, not just in terms of the tariffs, right? So we, as a country, are probably one of the lowest tariff countries in the world. We're definitely the biggest market, hands down, in terms of people who want access to it. We've got an average tariff rate of about 1.5. But we also have what we call low non-tariff barriers, meaning we don't throw up a bunch of obstacles. So it's one thing to give you access to a market, but then to say, well, you have to meet the following thresholds to get into the market. Therefore, it makes it impossible to do it, which is what happens with a lot of our agriculture, our auto industry in particular. So they'll create this random emission standard that they know that we will never be able to make. And they'll say, well, the tariff was low, but you just couldn't hit the other non-tariff barriers. So I say that because all of these deals are advancing U.S. interest, our ranchers, our farmers, our automakers, our service providers, and getting them greater market access. And the point that I've made to Dan on the morning meeting is we've been getting screwed for decades. And so maybe it's not the best deal in the entire world, but it's in every scenario, it's a heck of a lot better than we've ever had.
Yeah.
And people keep going, yeah, but. And I'm like, wait a second. Trump is getting us more and more market access. As I said, look throughout the spectrum of U.S. suppliers that want in. And then everyone on the left says, here, I'm not kidding you. This is the headline, by the way, in CNN, because the EU deal was massive, not just for U.S. investment, for all these things. The headline in CNN is Trump's EU deal averts disaster, but few are cheering. Which, it's like, dude, few are cheering except for the auto industry, the ag industry, service providers, and like everybody with a business that exports. So it's amazing. You mentioned military equipment. Energy investment. It's like, is there anything the guy could do that they can possibly be happy for?
Right. No. The answer is no. But it appears, Sean, that this was really just because nobody up until now had asked. It's like
Right.
What did he do here other than just say enough is enough? Up until now, Republicans and Democrats looked at these trade deficits and looked at the imbalance and looked at the tariffs that foreign countries are putting on our products, keeping us out of their markets while we were wide open, allowing them into our markets. And they just shrugged and said, what are you going to do? And Trump said, well, here, I'll show you what we're going to do.
And that's the key point, Larry, is the follow-up. As you mentioned, I served for 3 years in the U.S. Trade Rep's office at the end of the Bush administration. And in some cases, we would ask, sure, during a trade deal, and then we'd be told no, and we'd be like, okay, anyway, so let's move on. And when Trump did say, all right, well then, and with all due respect, I mean, part of it was we were at a very different place in the world that I'm not trying to, it's just, I don't think the second piece is what matters, because Trump said, okay, well, if you don't agree, then I'll tariff you at 50%. And that will be devastating to your businesses. And so as you heard, the EU commissioner said yesterday, we're not excited about the 15% tariff, but it's better than the 30 that we had gotten to, right? So they went from 50 to 30 to 15. So in their mind, it's a good deal. But no previous president from either party had said, you screw us and we'll screw you back. Yeah. And that's the difference, is that Trump was willing to say, I tell people this all the time, early on, Trump was talking about NAFTA and how much he hated it and da-da-da-da, and I tried to act like a wise guy and I'm Mr. Know-It-All, and I said, well, sir, the NAFTA is in force, which is the legal parlance that you talk about a trade agreement, and he looked at me and goes, I don't care. It's like, what do you mean?
That's simple.
It's a bad deal. It was like, I literally was thrown up. I'm like, excuse me? And he was just like, it's a bad deal. Our dairy farmers are getting screwed. Our auto workers are getting screwed. It's outdated. There's no intellectual protections for our creators here in the country. And I was like, okay, but what are you going to do about it? He's like, well, I'm going to rip it up. And I'm like, no one's ever done that. And literally, what do we have now? USMCA. And he's already renegotiating that. And that's the beauty. I think not just in trade, but the through line in everything that Trump does is that he's willing. I mean, think about how he deals with the media, and it's like no one previously had ever told them, we're gonna push you out of the pool, we're gonna bring in new creators. It's just the approach in everything he does is non-traditional, but the outcome, and this is where I keep telling people, focus on the outcome, not the process. Think about the trade deal. Everyone goes, I can't believe he threatened them, and it's like, okay, and what? We ended up with a better deal, so you're pissed about that. I think this is, again, where too many people in Washington get upset about the fact that, like, they didn't get a say in a PowerPoint presentation, and they weren't part of the process to bill a client. Whereas what Trump does is just say, screw it, I want a better deal. It works out. We benefit as a country. And I, like I said, I just keep telling people, stop, pause, focus on results.
Sean, what do you anticipate from some of these EU member countries in terms of climate goals and their green deals? Are they going to freak out about this? How will that sort of be affected because of this deal?
Well, it's a great question, because that's, again, one of those non-tariff barriers where they'll say to a company in the U.S., like, sure, you can sell into Germany, but you have to do these 5 things in accordance with our climate change standards. I think this is where the devil's going to be in the details. These are usually, like what we're talking about right now, are 4 or 5 page frameworks. And in a lot of cases, I think the pharmaceutical industry being one of them, where they're talking about, and there's some supply chain issues with respect to auto. So if you are BMW and you make a part for a BMW that's sold in South Carolina at a South Carolina plant, it would be terrible. I mean, there's a lot of details that are still going to have to be worked out. That's one where you put your finger on a really good one, because this is those are those non-tariff barriers that suddenly prevent it. But the EU in particular, some of the EU president's member states were really concerned about what this was going to do to their market. So at the end of the day, to your broader question, I think they realized, okay, we might have to suck it up on some of our ridiculous leftist goals, but it'll achieve bigger benefits for us than otherwise would have if we had gotten tariffs. So,
and again, which is another win-win. And by the way, people are losing sight of the fact that by the EU purchasing all of this energy, this good American energy from our country, that means they're not buying it from Putin, which means it's not funding his war machine, which is also part of the deal. Hey, Sean, can you stay with us? We got to check. Your favorite spot of the show is the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center, I know. But I got to ask you about the Russian collusion.
Garage. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Plus, as long as Jamie gets in there for a little, I'm good. And then I'd love to do a little garage door open.com. And something about hair loss is always exciting for me to hear.
Jamie Whitten is in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center, and Sean's listening very intently.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Continuing now with Sean Spicer. Of course, the Sean Spicer Show is available on all platforms, video and audio. Wherever you like to watch or listen to those shows, make sure you subscribe. It is must-view, I was going to say television, but that's sort of an outdated term, every night at 6 p.m. Sean, obviously a lot of interest in this Russian collusion story. I know that you are interested not just as from a political and news perspective, but also on a personal level, because you were there. You saw how this story sort of handicapped and handcuffed the administration before it even started, before Trump was even sworn in. We now see a paper trail leading back to President Obama himself directing the intelligence community to basically come up with the assessment to back up the conclusion that he determined, which is not the way they're supposed to work. The intelligence is supposed to help you reach a conclusion. Instead, they reached their conclusion that Putin had successfully interfered with the election, and he did it because he wanted Trump to win. That narrative that Trump was an illegitimate president and he was really there to serve Moscow instead of the U.S. was absolutely devastating. And I want you to sort of reflect on what you're learning now from your perspective, because you were there, but also, if you could, reveal a little bit about what happened in that infamous Trump Tower briefing. James Comey goes to brief Donald Trump about the so-called Steele dossier when Comey knew that it was a fraud. John Brennan knew it was a fraud. It shouldn't have been in the intelligence community assessment, but they briefed him, and then within 24 hours, there's Jake Tapper with the breaking anonymous story that James Comey had briefed the president. It was a setup, Sean. The whole thing was a setup.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the way you framed it. But not only that, but when you say it's personal to me, not just in terms of the financial and reputational, et cetera, outcome afterwards, and the damage done to President Trump, that he was suffered, not just reputationally, but the fact that he couldn't, for the first year plus, it was all Russia, Russia, Russia every day. But let me go back to what you just said at the beginning. So there's this meeting at Trump Tower, January 5th. The FBI says we want to brief you on current status. This is, I have a security clearance. I've had one for 20-something years, and I was going to be the incoming White House press secretary. So because I maintained a security clearance, I was one of the handful of people that got to be in there with the president. At the end of the meeting, and this is critical for people to understand because you have a very, Washington understanding audience. People get this, right? Because everyone always has said, well, how does, the way that Trump's interacting with Comey. Now, remember, he's a non-politician. He's never met the guy in his life. He's never interacted with senior intelligence before. And at the end of the meeting, Comey's at the far end of the table. He sits up and he says, Mr. President-elect, may I see you privately in the corner of the room? And it was like a teacher pulling a parent aside. He brings him over to the corner. They talk for a few minutes, go upstairs. Then the meeting concludes. We go upstairs to then Mr. Trump's office. And I said, so what was that about? And he says there's this unverified report that's going to be in this intelligence thing and makes some wild accusations, but not to worry about it or whatever. And I was like, okay. And then, like you said, 24 hours later, I start getting calls from BuzzFeed and Jake Tapper saying, we've got this Annex A. Now, we had never seen it, remember, and Comey didn't tell him it was done because he said, I'm briefing you on some basically, when this report is finished, we've got this little thing at the end. It ended up being called Annex A. And it's a bunch of it's salacious, unverified things. And Trump, of course, is like, why are you okay, thanks. Then we literally have to call Mike Pompeo. He's then a member of Congress and say, get to a SCIF, a secure facility, get the CIA to bring you this document, this Annex A, read it, and then we'll go into a SCIF, we'll get secure lines, and then kind of start to really tell us what's happening. So we're literally behind the eight ball. CNN and BuzzFeed now have seen this before. I'll give you guys the Cliff Note version, but
wait,
one of the
CNN and BuzzFeed saw this before the incoming administration saw it. And just to fill in the blanks for people, you got Pompeo because he was the incoming CIA director at the time before he switched to state. I just wanted to fill that in.
So, and he's a member of Congress. I'm sorry, good point. Yeah, so he's a member of Congress. He's the incoming CIA director. So we call him. He gets to a secure facility. He is able to read it. We're on a secure line in the SCIF that we have in New York. And he's kind of walking through the details of this. Now, here's the kicker. One of the details is that Michael Cohen, who was then the president's advisor and lawyer, went to Prague and did all this stuff. So I call Michael, literally from Mr. Trump's office there, and I said, hey, I got a random question for you. And I didn't want to tip my hand, but I watched enough Law and Order. And I said, hey, Michael, random question. Do you have your passport? And he said, he's one of these guys. Some people do this. I don't. He's like, I actually have it on me. I said, no kidding. How far away are you? He's like, I left 20 minutes ago. That was to New York. I said, I just trust me when I tell you this. This is really important. I need you to come back, and I want to look at your passport. And he is like, what? I don't know Michael that well. He's like, are you insane? And I'm like, just trust me. I'm with the president-elect. We're in his office. I need to see your passport. So he actually says, okay, fine. That's that's what Mr. Trump wants. Mr. Trump's going to get it. And so he drives back. I look, and sure enough, there's no Prague. And I call Jake and Ben Smith, and then at BuzzFeed. I said, hey, one of these allegations is that Michael Cohen went there. He can prove that not only, by the way, he had never left the country. So it wasn't like he went to like Syria and then got smuggled into Prague by a Hungary. Right. He never he wasn't even out of the country. In fact, he was at a father-daughter visit to some West Coast school with his daughter at the time. And they're like, okay, so what? And I'm like, well, so what? Like, you have this unverified document with an allegation about one of his top aides, which I can demonstrably prove as false. And yet they were like, well, that's up for people to decide. And I'm like, no. That's actually what you guys, when you do that banana and apple ad, that's called a fact. So to your point, what you take this whole thing that Comey is now, that Pam Bondi, Tulsi Gabbard rather, has now declassified. It shows that these people literally weaponized intelligence. They knew what was right, they knew what was wrong, but they wanted to create a narrative because the two things that came out were we colluded with the Russians. Now, first of all, if you remember during the campaign, it was you guys couldn't collude with each other to get a lunch order, and now apparently we're colluding with Putin to win an election. Okay, fine, whatever. But that had to be established as the predicate to therefore then say that we were colluding because Trump was this asset and Putin wanted him to win, which, again, when we look at the actual – and this is where I keep telling people on the left, don't take my word for it. Go read the underlying documents because it's from what the intelligence put out. It's clear. They had all this salacious stuff on Hillary Clinton, right? All of this stuff about potentially damning allegations about her use of pharmaceuticals and drugs, et cetera. Whether that's true or not, the bottom line is this. They held back starting in September of dropping any of that information. So if you want Trump to win, you would think that you would destroy her, right? That would be the obvious thing. Like, hey, we can make her unpalatable. So why would Russia, who, quote, wanted Trump to win, not release everything they could on Clinton? Starting in September, they ceased all that stuff. They knew that. And it wasn't until December 6th, a month after the election, that Obama orders this intelligence document to be created. Wait, hold on. Suddenly, a month after the election, and by the way, here's the other reason that this is personal for me. I was brought in as an RNC official to the Department of Homeland Security headquarters then on Nebraska Avenue and told by them that based on all of the intelligence and the analysis that there's no way that our elections could ever be hacked. And they wanted me and a couple other officials to vouch for them. Why? Because they believed that Hillary Clinton would win and that Donald Trump would say that the election was rigged. And they wanted us to vouch that their briefing showed that it was impenetrable, that you couldn't hack an election. So they all believed that she would win. It could never happen. And it wasn't until Trump won that they thought, oh, God, we have to create some kind of narrative that this didn't happen. This is embarrassing for us.
And then people, Russia hacked the election became the talking point that they repeated over.
But Larry, this is the key. This is the absolute key for your audience because I have enough people. Just tell people, go read the documents. Don't take my word. Don't take Larry's word or Julie's word or even Jamie Whitten's word. Go read the documents.
By the way, a lot of people don't know this. Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center, it's a skiff. Sean, we got to leave it there.
Oh, yeah.
Great stuff. We'll be watching.
Really
this is why we wanted Sean on here, not just for the trade thing, but he was literally in the room as this unplayed and happened. That's why his show is absolute appointment viewing or listening as he covers this story, second only to the way we're covering it right here. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
Second. You bet, guys. Have a good one.
8:27.
Coming up, we'll talk about the U.S. Department of Education going after 5 Northern Virginia school districts for violating federal law. Keep it here. It's 8:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
How many days till Election Day? 100!
That's right. Actually, now a little under 100 days until the election in Virginia for your next governor. That was Abigail Spanberger with a bunch of white suburban moms cheering her on because that's the strategy. She dresses in a J. Crew wardrobe, and she just looks like your typical white suburban PTA mom. The difference, though, here is she's not. That's not who she is at all. And she rose to fame in 2018 in the pushback against Trump, and she was like, we need more women in Congress, and we're going to, represent women because Trump is Trump. And she fashioned herself as an expert on national security issues because she used to work for the CIA. And because of that, and because of the conversation we just had, Julie, with Sean Spicer, I think all of her positions on the Russian collusion hoax and on the Hunter Biden laptop story and all these other things where she brought her expertise and credentials to the table and said, I know these things. This is who she is. This is her background and her credentials and her experience. She brought it all to the table to give us her wise opinion about all of these issues, right?
Yeah. I also think it's really important that parents look back. She rose to fame, you say, in 2018. That was right before COVID, right before the shutdowns, right before the extended masking of kids. If you were horrified by what happened during that time, she will continue those policies.
Yes, but let's focus. You're right.
Fine.
Absolutely right. You're right. I want to focus right now, though, on specifically her. She said, I am competent and I am great to be a governor. Look at my job as a congresswoman and look at my job with the CIA. Sure. So now here she was at that time using her position as a former CIA caseworker to talk about these issues. Listen.
I think it's absolutely appropriate that tech firms should not be pushing Russian propaganda, and when they are made aware that that exists by the United States' FBI, they have an obligation to recognize the harm that propaganda from a foreign adversary nation can pose to our elections and our election systems.
That was specifically using her role, her wise expertise on CIA and Russian propaganda, talking about the Hunter Biden laptop, which we know. So basically, all of these things that we know are hoaxes, she had the ability to know whether it was true or not, and she was wrong. Or she lied specifically.
And she shut people down. I'm the expert. I'm the former CIA person. I'm the intelligence community person.
That's right. Your opinion doesn't matter.
I'm the expert. You're an idiot. Right. I have the clearance. I know what's real.
And to your point about the COVID policies,
she did the same thing.
She could not see through that. She denied the Wuhan lab leak story. She's doctrinaire. She is also a radical on gender issues.
Absolutely.
Everything that Gavin Newsom and Tim Walz are doing in their radical left-wing states,
she wants it here. Yep.
She would do it here. And God bless Winsome Sears, who's starting to hit her stride now and pushing back against Abigail Spanberger, I believe. She's out with another banger of an ad. Take a listen to this. Yeah, it's a great ad, and again, uses her own words. She sponsored that so-called Equality Act that harmed girls and continues to harm girls, and this with the backdrop of our education department now reaching the determination that 5 Northern Virginia school districts have violated the Title IX laws with regard to protecting women and girls. Abigail Spanberger will be part of that problem. She'll move it along.
Oh, she wants that statewide. Are you kidding? She wants that statewide. In Alexandria, Virginia, they constructed a new high school. The bathrooms are unisex. Okay? She wants new construction of high. I mean, this will expand across the state, and parents will have no rights. And let me tell you, if the General Assembly goes Democrat, thank God for our current governor, Youngkin, who has vetoed. I mean, they can't even keep track. It's unbelievable how many things that he has vetoed. If Spanberger is in with a Democrat-controlled General Assembly, watch out, parents. We're going to have to move. I mean, they will. Yeah.
She does not want to talk about these issues. And I'm glad that Sears is pushing them. I don't know. Have you seen a debate scheduled? Because I don't think she's hiding from her. She's hiding from her record in Congress. She's hiding from her record in the CIA because she was wrong and, if not,
she's
participated in this hoax. She is hiding from every issue. She's hiding from the gender issue. She's hiding from all of it. And the media is not asking her or challenging her on any of it. Let me tell you something. You take your radical Gavin Newsom style positions and you dress them up with a J. Crew wardrobe and look at me, I'm just right from the PTA meeting, suburban housewife vibe. You can try to cover that up and you can try to put that veneer on it, but they're still radical policies. And she
Absolutely.
is dangerous for the children of Virginia. This is so important. And I hope Sears just keeps pushing that gender issue, sanctuary policies, and her track record with the CIA. She was part of that deep state hoax. It is 8:43. We love talking to Scott Walker, Young America's Foundation. He made a big announcement, by the way, Julie, I don't know if you saw over the weekend, that he will not be. A lot of people were pushing him to try to run for governor again in Wisconsin in 26. But he announced officially, and I'm a big fan of Scott Walker. I think he's great.
Me too.
He said, no, my role with Young America's Foundation is way more important, building young conservative voices. You look at how this last election went by. It is underreported what an impact Scott Walker and Young America's Foundation, our friend Jessica Jensen and Spencer Brown and the whole team over there did. Charlie Kirk gets a lot of headlines, and he does a great job with young voters too. But they kick butt over there.
Yes, they really do.
And he announced that he's going to stay with YAF, and I'm happy to hear that. Meanwhile, Democrats, liberals are really struggling with young voters. And to that end, they had their own sort of thing. It's called the Voters Tomorrow event for young
Summit.
left of center. Yeah,
Fight for
right,
our
thanks.
future summit. Yeah.
Right, there you go. Fight for the future. So the keynote was Kamala Harris. Sort of. She sent in a video.
Yeah.
Take a listen.
Hello, voters of tomorrow. I want to thank you for everything you all are doing to organize, empower, and advocate for Gen Z. I am so excited about your work. It is critically important that we have organizations such as this who understand that we must be intentional about lifting up our young leaders and encouraging your ambition. Your generation has grown up on the front lines of so many crises, from COVID and the climate crisis to gun violence and mental health. You know what's at stake, and you are not waiting for someone else to figure it out.
Can you be done?
Okay, great. All right, enough.
My ears are bleeding, honestly.
She literally phoned it in.
Well, and I love how she starts off by saying, it is so important. This summit is so important. So important that I'm not going to go. But you know who did show up in person? Nancy Pelosi. And who screams youthful excitement. And who is attracted to politics? Nancy Pelosi. I mean, can you imagine, a less interesting politician to the youth of America? No, there's
nothing says revitalizing the youth vote and energizing young voters like Nancy Pelosi. Although, young college kids, they do like to go out and get drunk. And it sounds like that may have been Nancy's plan too.
Their obligation, but also their employees, their customers, the community they lived in. So about 30 times. Stakeholder capitalism. Now we've moved to shareholder capitalism, where the CEO of the company is making like 300 or 400 times what her workers are making.
She's plastered.
Totally.
She's been doing the Napa Valley wine thing. And how inspiring was that for the young voters there? That's it's good stuff. 8:53.